Okay.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. Uh, I'm the instructor for this course, Uncovering Consumer Insights, and I want to generally talk about what the course is going to be. It's tough to really teach insights without actually trying to do it in class, you know. It's almost like cycling. You cannot learn cycling by telling you how to cycle unless you really cycle. So that's the whole idea of this course. We're trying to make it as practical as possible. For instance, if you were to ask, if you were asked to introduce yourself, how would you introduce yourself? There are many ways in which you could possibly introduce yourself, but you want to be insightful there and try to give somebody an idea about what you do or what you're about and stuff like that. I don't know if you've seen this interesting site called Me So Far, have you? So in that, they have various clues as to how you could introduce yourself. For instance, what are 3 things you would tell your 18-year-old self? What's a word you overuse? What's the dumbest purchase you have made? You know, these things help you to actually think about how innovatively you can actually introduce yourself. For example, one person talked about just one number and said 3. These are the 3 times that I failed in chemistry. These are the, I have 3 degrees in chemistry today, which is a BS, an MS, and a PhD. And these are the 3 people he talked about: his mom, dad, and his dog, which are important for him. So it's almost like, you know, being insightful that way, and that's the crux of this whole thing. Now we may ask, I mean, is it data? Is it a factoid? Is it a fact? It's none of those, really speaking, which is an insight. An insight is a lot more than just mere data or a fact or a factoid. It is about innovatively thinking about something, and the fundamental fire in innovation is an insight. Because if you don't have the right insight, then you're not able to innovate. And so we're talking about how do you come up with these insights, and how do you actually train yourself to bring in insights, consumer insights. And this could well be an assignment. You know, what is an insight? And you know, if we are asked to give examples, like one of our students here wrote about insight this way. And an insight is an understanding on a topic or thing that arises from a collection of data and the overlay of context. So one thing is, you need to have context to make sure that your data is interpreted the right way to get an insight out of it. And she discusses more about data points, facts, and factoids. But then if you really think about this, this is an interaction. So, you know, she had the example of thinking about breakfast, and in that context, if banana is an interesting breakfast item, and then she talked about several aspects about breakfast there. And therefore, when you think about insights, you're really looking at whether it is a fact-filled exercise or a fact-based thing. I would lean more towards fact-based, because, you know, if you have a spreadsheet with a lot of numbers and you've got 3 things highlighted there, if it is filled with a lot of numbers, most people tend to look at all the numbers and not just the highlighted ones. But if you had only those numbers which were to be highlighted anyway, then you have a fact-based insight, not a fact-filled insight. Similarly, if you were to think about this book, have you seen this book? Have you read this book? Have you heard of this? Yeah, so it's a very fundamental thing to think about penetration. And you say, okay, you need to penetrate for growth. Okay, but if you translate that into an interesting insight, like 1% penetration could lead to 1% share increase, then that becomes, though it's a data point, it becomes an insight. And that's what you come up with analytical techniques. Some of you might have taken the analytics courses, which talk about regression and, you know, the way you interpret regression equations and the results from regression, right? The more important thing is, insight is not an end in itself. Insights should lead to some action, otherwise it doesn't really benefit. And some of you might be thinking, you know, data and insights. So I'm not going to be an analyst, but I don't know why an insight is important for me. And I feel that insight is not for the data department or the strategy department or any individual department. It can be for anybody. It can be a collective organizational capability. For instance, when Unilever started mining data, they looked at the call center data and they realized that at the call center there were calls coming in asking them about shampoos. And there was one consumer who actually led a consumer question which led to a good product, the Tresemme range, which was, I'm using the conditioner first and then the shampoo, is that good or bad? Now they have a new product which actually makes you use the conditioner first and the shampoo next. So again, insight can come from anywhere, and insight is important for anybody. It could be like Mythbusters, it's experimental. You probably don't have an insight without conducting an experiment. So that is another way of finding an insight. We'll talk about that in class, how we can design experiments and learn from it and create insights. It's an art science. It's not science, it's not art, it's a combination. And that's the importance of this class. Again, it's not pure data. I mean, you may ask these questions like, am I going to be working with SPSs in SAS? Not necessarily, but you should be able to interpret from SPSs and SAS reports so that that can be insightful. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I think we have time, so I'm going to go deep into this. One thing for me, when I talk about insights, having thought about this quite a bit, is it should be very simple. It should be retrospectively self-evident. It shouldn't be like it takes too much effort to explain something to somebody. And that is an insight. That's the beauty of an insight, and that's the difficulty in making a complex thing simple. So that's another thing that we learn in this class about how do we make complex things simpler and how do we present it in an interesting and most of the time entertaining way. Now, all this has structure to it, has some structure at least I would say. So we've got different topics of focus for the different sessions, and they range from defining course objectives and some inspiration and insights as to examples of what types of insights there would be, and we will be talking about data sources and tools that you can use, and also some analytical methods that you can use to create insights. Let me give you some examples. For example, decision journeys. Now, how do you create decision journeys and what insights are possible from there? We all know that consumer decision making today is not a linear thing. It is non-linear, it is random, it is not systematic, can be any which way. So if you think about the car buyers and the car market, you have these triggers which take you to buying a car. It could be that your car broke down and it has not been, it's beyond repairs and you want another car, or it is just that it's become old, you need another car. It may be a life stage. There could be many triggers that are working there. Now, there is a zero moment of truth, which is something which has been introduced by Google in the digital age. Before you actually test the product, there is a lot of research that you do. You want to look at what are the different brands, and then there are a couple of insights that come out of it, which is to say people at an average look at 18 different sources to collect this information before they even walk into a dealer's showroom. And the number of brands that they cover can start with 2 or 3 and it could go up to 4 or 6. So there are considerable additional brands that are coming into your basket of decision making to determine what car you really want to get to. And then you also have other insights. You're actually annotating this whole consumer decision making chart to see what are the things that consumers do and decipher the consumer decision making process. So that's one way in which you can come up with insights. Another